Hello, I'm Dr. Stina McCullough, and today I have a very special guest. His name is Dave Sears, and he's the owner of Clover Luck Farm in Massachusetts. His farm has been in the family for over 60 years. It was started as a horse farm by his father in 1959, and now he's added pigs, dairy cattle, beef cattle, and chickens. He's best known for the special type of pork that he raises. It's called Berkshire Pork. Their pork is claimed to be among the best tasting in the area. Now, Dave believes that the high quality of his pork stems from the tried and true methods of pasture-raised pigs. He also operates a microdairy and sells raw milk directly to consumers, and he's committed to applying organic standards and principles. He does not use any growth hormones, commercial fertilizers, herbicides, or fungicides on his farm. Dave, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you very much. Nice to meet you.
Thanks. Okay, let's jump right in. So I'm interested in the Berkshire pork. So I have to admit, I did not know what this type of pork was before I found your website, but I've learned since then that Berkshire is a heritage breed. So can you explain to us, what does it mean to be a heritage breed?
The term heritage breed to me means breeds of pigs that did not get genetically modified or manipulated in, I don't know, probably the 40s, 50s, and 60s to work in a confinement system. So these pigs, these heritage breed pigs, were out there in the farming community, the agricultural community, and they, for whatever reason, weren't at that level desirable traits for a farmer to do a real commercial setting where they wanted to maximize production, maximize efficiency, maximize time. So it's mainly a breed that was, in a sense, almost forgotten about, as was the Berkshire. That pig, that breed was literally forgotten about and almost went extinct to somebody's level. And so one of these things where it didn't suit the confinement operation at all. And that to me is what heritage breed means.
Okay, that's a fantastic definition. So a heritage breed now is going to be different than most of the breeds that you would find in your local grocery store, right?
That's right. The confinement, there's 5 or 6 breeds that I'm aware of, and I don't follow the commercial pork market that deeply, but Yorkshires, Landrace, Poland China, Hampshire, to name a few, are what were the breeds that were genetically bred to be a confinement animal. So they spent their origination being destined for a confinement operation and not pasture. They can do well on pasture, but they were designed more to be towards this confinement operation and maximize things. So there's several breeds that fit this bill and are still being used today. The pink pigs, the Yorkshire pig, is the most popular, and that's a breed that was completely designed genetically or bred to be a confinement animal, and actually doesn't do very well in a pasture setting. If I was to bring that pig to my pasture setting, it probably wouldn't do very well. It would take a year or two for it to adjust, if it adjusted at all.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
Well, okay. So, yeah, because I think that's something that most of us may not be aware of, that when you do go into your grocery store, you pick up like pork chops or ground pork. These aren't a heritage, or what I might even call a true breed. These are more of a genetically manipulated breed so that they can grow in the confinement. So like you said, it's about the output so that they grow faster, right? That's a big factor, is that they need them, these industrialized, the food system needs these animals to grow faster because it's really about the profit, right?
Exactly. And I think, and I want to be very respectful of my fellow farmers, and I don't want to make this next statement sound like they're bad guys or whatever, but they do use, this pig is also, because it's in a setting like this, its environment is very tricky. So they are fed antibiotics almost as a prophylactic to keep them from getting sick, because they need to do that in they're not allowed to live naturally and pick up. They don't see dirt, for example. They're on cement. They never get to root and do what pigs do and be a pig. as we joke about, go out and be a pig. We like that when they go out and get all muddy and dirty, but they're missing that component when they're in a confinement operation. And so they will use antibiotics as a rule to keep these animals healthy. And I don't think that's a good thing for our food.
Yeah, and so in contrast, since your pigs are raised in more of a natural setting, correct? And you use regenerative practices in terms of the soil, your soil quality, and you're trying to regenerate the soil. So your pigs would be exposed to all different types of good microbes, like in the soil and on the plants, and they're not only ingesting them and getting them on their skin, they're inhaling them simply from the natural environment that they're in. And one of the consequences of that is that you don't have to use antibiotics as a common measure, right? Is it safe to say you would use antibiotics only under extreme circumstances?
We'd only use antibiotics if the animal's life was in jeopardy. And usually that happens around when a piglet might suffer a really bad cut, or pig might suffer a bad cut, or a sow might become, after birthing, maybe there's an issue with them. But it's very, very rare that we use even need to use antibiotics on the pigs at all. We have a standard practice. We use antibiotics only to save their life if needed.
Okay, and this is another reason why I wanted to reach out to you, to dispel a myth that a lot of us buy into, that when you're raising animals, this livestock, that you need to give them vaccines and antibiotics, and this is just standard care of practice. But what I find interesting is that that's not your first line of defense. So can you tell us a little bit about what is your first line of defense against diseases?
Our first line of defense for both our pork, our swine herd, our chickens, and our cattle is what I call whole herd health. We start out with managing them to be as healthy as possible. It's like you and I, if we eat good things and we're taking care of ourselves, we don't need medicine. We don't need to go to the doctor. So it's very similar to that concept. So if they're in a natural setting, they're outdoors, they're not in a heat, there's no heat. We don't heat the barn. We rely on the environment that we have. We don't do anything special. And that's what keeps them healthy. We're very fastidious about making sure they do have minerals to consume. If our soil doesn't have all the minerals, so we add minerals to their daily routine. And we just feed good food and give them lots of things to play with. And in the case of, pigs being pigs, if they're not, how we're handling them and keeping their stress varying, if they're happy pigs, they're not going to get sick generally. Usually a stress, if there's always something laying out there somewhere, somehow in the soil, and they do get things. But if they're healthy and not stressed out, that stress can be a trigger to getting an infection or a disease or something. And it could be latent in their system, but they'll overcome it themselves if they're even sick. But a stress like a cold, if they're out in a cold setting and they need to be lying dry when it's temperature isn't the issue, it's just dryness. They don't even really need a roof over their head just to keep whatever bedding they're lying in dry. So between keeping them in that natural setting and letting them do their thing, eating the herbs and grass and things that are out there in the wild, we really don't need to do a whole lot from a health standpoint. And it in the long run, and as the animals have babies and mature through our system, each generation gets stronger and stronger. And we've found with the pigs, we've by far doing less things now than we did 3 years ago. We're literally not doing anything from, or need to do anything from a health standpoint with these animals. It's really been amazing to watch a natural system develop and watch these pigs develop through it as each generation grows up and works here.
That's amazing. And if these animals did happen to get sick, I know it's rare, but if one of your animals did happen to get sick, do you then rely on pharmaceuticals first, or do you have another method that you utilize?
We'll use antibiotics only in the last straw. We try very hard to find organic treatments. There are some out there. And a lot of times the pig will, if they're kept, we isolate them. We'll do other things before we have to give antibiotics. And that's when we'll pull out the antibiotics if we think the animals, we got to balance it because we can't wait too long. It's one of those things, you want to stay ahead of these things, but I haven't used antibiotics for anything for 3 years with the pigs. And I think that last one was an injury. The pig had a really bad cut and it was a piglet, and we had to give it some antibiotics to keep the infection. My cat just jumped up on the computer. Sorry.
No worries. So, I remember you saying that sometimes you would also use like herbals, right? And homeopathic remedies.
Right. Yes. The pigs we don't use, there's not a lot that we do use with them. Pigs are more injury related. They're prone to injury of some sort. So there's not a lot of things that we can do with the cattle. We do for mastitis, for example. We are working for a couple of years with an organic vet from Wisconsin, and I don't even know what's in. Well, it's labeled. I do know what's in it, but it's all holistic, homeopathic, like herbal remedies that they use that they've tried and true, and they work, which is amazing. We don't have to use antibiotics to help the cattle in any point, honestly.
Which is quite amazing because you have dairy cattle, correct?
That's right.
So yes. I find that amazing because, as you know, before this interview we talked, and he's about to read my RBGH chapter in the book. So I studied dairy cows extensively, and included in that was that in the industrialized system, mastitis is very common. And so antibiotics are given like pretty freely. So it's really amazing to hear that you're not even having to use those, that mastitis is not really even an issue in your cattle, the dairy cows that have been raised in more of a natural setting. And presumably a large part of that is because because of the setting that they're raised in and because of the management practices that you're implementing, they have stronger immune systems.
That's the whole point. I guess that speaks to another layer of the whole herd health. So if they're not stressed out and their immunity's strong, there's very little we actually need to do. And it goes with one of the preventatives that we use for mastitis, for example, is kelp. We feed it on a regular basis, and kelp I don't know what it does, but it seems to work. And it's adding a whole other element of minerals that the cattle can utilize. They're obviously not going to get from the feed that we feed them. So with things like that, I think kelp is a big thing for us, actually. And then to prevent it from happening, and that goes back to that whole herd health, prevention is what's critical.
Yeah. And what I think is great is to connect this to consumers, or connect this with consumers. So connect the practices that you're doing with the consumer so that they understand why is it important for their own health to make purchases like from your farm, or, to make purchases that are from farms that are not only organic, but are having these regenerative practices, to check to see if they are giving vaccines, if they are using antibiotics or the growth hormones. Because what I hear you saying is that the health of the animals that you're raising is far exceptional to those of most of those that you're going to find in your local grocery store. And that health is imparted onto the consumer who is eating these animals from your farm. Not only in the fact that they're not going to have the antibiotics and the growth hormones or the residues from that are ingested in either through the food and incorporated into their bodies, but because of the management practices that you use, your meat is going to have theoretically a higher microbial content of good microbes in it. The microbes that we need to function and to live. We are roughly, we believe, 10 microbes for every 1 human cell. So we are predominantly microbes, and now we're understanding more of the importance of these microbes and how they not only help us digest food and make different nutrients in our guts, but they probably communicate through every tissue and every cell in our body and help regulate them. So I think it's really critical to have farmers like yourself who are aware of this and who are providing these good microbe-rich foods for us, because without these, we're losing our microbial diversity. Like just going to the grocery store and buying the pork there, you are more than likely losing microbial diversity, which means you are slowly eroding your own health. I mean, what do you say? Would you agree with that?
I would agree. With the meat, I'd more look towards sort of the mineral and the fat. Because the heart healthy fat from pasture-raised meats, we know it's proven science that we're doing a far better service to our bodies eating heart healthy fat. And it's definitely the case that pasture-raised anything, chickens, pork, beef, milk, has this real strong component that is good for us. We should be eating it. We shouldn't be avoiding this fat. And I think from the standpoint of what the mineralization does to the meat, I think that, well, residue from antibiotics, it can't be good for us to eat that. But now when you have an animal that's got a full mineral package, now I think you do have a meat that's more richer, more beneficial dietetically. All these little micronutrients that are passed on from how they live in a natural setting are vital to us in very, very, very small amounts. So I would agree completely with what you said, and carry it through to all animals that forage on a farm. They don't need to be locked in a barn and isolated from their habitat.
Exactly. So really, it's a win-win. You're eating foods that are, healthier for your body. It's healthier for the animal and healthier for the environment. So I want to thank you for what you do. One question I have is, how can consumers find your meat or your products?
We have a farm stand here at the store at our farm here in Pepperell, Massachusetts, so they can visit us. The raw milk has to be sold. The Massachusetts laws for raw milk, you have to come to the farm to buy it. We've got raw milk 7 days a week. The pork we've got here, beef, eggs, and I can do shipping. I can do online orders. If people email me, wanted something sent to them, shipped to them, I can do that with the pork or the beef. We also have, we raise another breed of pig called Ossabaw Island Hog, which is a very interesting and very unique, flavorful meat, good heart healthy fat pork as well. So we've got another breed that we work with as well.
Okay, fantastic. So can you remind us again, what's your website?
CloverLuckFarm.com.
Okay, CloverLuckFarm.com, and your email is?
CloverLuckFarm@gmail.com.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Dave.
Well, thank you. Thank you for all your work, and I love your book. Keep it. Let's see another one come out soon.
Okay, thanks. All right, until next time, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.